idea of things you should be looking at and what to be prepared for. Now, here's how the written exam goes at State Board. It rotates. So there's like 6 different tests and they're rotating. So in other words, if I go, I may have more questions that seem like they were more anatomy and physiology, or it seemed like it was more on hairstyling. And you, my friend, went to State Board and yours seemed to be more on, disinfection, sanitation. So that's how that goes. And that's to ensure really that there's no cheating, because at the end of the day, if we all had the same test, I could tell you, hey, these are the answers to the test. So that's how that works. So I'm going to read this to you really quick. For each NIC National Theory exam, there are 2 parts to every candidate information bulletin stored as separate documents. What I want to share with you is the top 4 sources that they are getting. In other words, their thoughts for the questions for the written exam. And of course, if anything new comes up, I will share it with you, okay? I want to backtrack a little bit. This is something that you should know, but if you don't know this, I'm just going to tell you again. First off, your written exam is 1 hour and 30 minutes. Now, it used to be 2 hours, but they've cut that down to 90 minutes, right? So you have 1 hour and a half. There are 110 questions, but 10 of the questions don't count. So they're like warm-up questions. You are being graded on 100 questions. It's going to be on a computer. And now I don't know how it is since COVID has happened, but I know prior to COVID, when you finished your practical, let's say if your practical exam was at 7:15 in the morning and you finished early, you could go over to where the written exam area was, and you could sign up, and if they had room in there, they will take you in. So you could be done with your test early. And then of course you would wait in the waiting area, and they let you know on the spot if you're licensed or not. So what'll happen is you'll get your green paper, which is your license, or you'll receive a white envelope, and that lets you know you didn't pass. The good thing is if you don't pass the first time, you get a white envelope and there's your paperwork, and it's breaking down whichever part of the exam you didn't pass and how many points you got out of the points that the procedure is. So let's say if a procedure is worth 50 points, and it'll tell you, okay, so it breaks down the criteria, this is what they're expecting, this is what you did, and the number that you got out of the amount of points when they're breaking it down, right? So let's say it says holding the comb, 12 points. You didn't hold your comb, so you got 0 out of 12 points on that part. So that's how they break that down. But there are no electronics allowed in the State Board facility. When you're testing and you go beyond that line, there's no cell phones. You cannot communicate with other candidates. I would not communicate with the examiner. Don't try to get in good. It just does not work. If you ask questions, they ask you to please do as you were instructed. Another thing to consider, if English is not your first language and you struggle, you have to fill out a form prior to going to State Board. But if you think you may need an interpreter, they do allow you to do that for the written exam, not the practical exam. So just so you know that. Hold on, let me get a sip of coffee. So that's one thing I want to tell you. Of course, you cannot bring any tablets, computers, any notebooks, any written material. You will be dismissed, and you will have to pay all over again for your exam. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure if you'll have to end up taking the whole exam. People ask, how many times can I go back to test? You have up to 3 times. Let's say if you failed the written and you have to go back and take it. How many times do you have to retake it? You have 3 times to retake it before you have to take the entire exam all over again. written and practical. So just note that. If you don't pass the practical, same thing. 3 times, and then the 4th time you'll have to pay to take the whole thing, written and practical. But these are the 4 sources that they are deriving, and I'll say top sources because there's more sources listed on there, meaning the text that they're coming out of. The number 1 is Cosmetology Career Concepts from Click International, and that's from the year 2014. You have Pivot Point Fundamentals Cosmetology 2016, and that's from Pivot Point International Inc. You have the 2016 Milady Standard Cosmetology textbook, and then today's class, Cosmetology 1, Cosmetology 2, Basic Aesthetics 1 and 2, Nail Technician, and that's from 2016 by Melior Inc. So that's just a little side note for you to know. I'm trying to think, there was something else that I wanted to tell you about, and for the life of me, it has slipped my mind, and that's annoying because I really wanted you to know. Okay, well, we're just going to get right into it. And from the looks of the time, it's probably going to be a 2-part series because I really want to get through this. The first thing I want to do before we get into what subjects you need to study is I want to go over these sample questions, because you can also find these when you look up what to expect for your written exam. And this is just to give you an idea. And please remember, when you're listening to someone's podcast and you really want to get that information and they may be going too fast for you, that's the fun of a podcast or a YouTube video, is you can always pause it, write down what you need to write down, and continue. So any information that I'm giving, don't feel like you lost it. You can listen to this again, you can pause it, you can rewind it, and hopefully you get it. And share this, please. Share this with any friends you have that they're thinking about going back to State Board, but they don't know what to study. And some of them, have their kits already, they have the textbook, and they're just overwhelmed because they don't know what to study for the written. Please share this. Okay, so you have, remember I told you have 10 warm-up questions on your written test. In here, they're going to give you, this is 8 sample questions just to give you an idea of what they're going to, what they'll be asking. The first one is, which of the following will reinforce and reconstruct the hair shaft? So I'm going to say that again. Which of the following will reinforce and reconstruct the hair shaft? The answer is protein conditioner. The options you have is A, scalp treatment, B, balancing shampoo, C, hair brushing, and then D, protein conditioner. The second question is, when damaged, which of the following will cause the hair growth to be inhibited? The answer is papilla. But the options you have is papilla A, B, shaft, C, cuticle, and D, erector pili. The answer is A. Number 3, a condition caused by an infestation of head lice is, you have, the answer is pediculosis capitalis. The options you have is A, tinea barbi, B, scabies, C, pediculosis capitalis, which is your answer, and then D, tinea capitis. And then one more. I don't think I'm going to go over all 8. Debris is removed from tools and implements using which of the following procedures? The answer is cleaning. Your options are A, cleaning, B, disinfection, C, sterilization, and D, decontamination. So those are just a few to give you an idea, okay, what types of questions to expect on your written exam. So the first part is scientific concepts, and I'm going to share with you. Now, what I did was I wrote down the chapters that you could find that in. I'm coming out of the Milady textbook, so I'm only able to go by that text. Pivot Point is a lot like Milady, and usually their chapters aren't far behind from each other, so you would just have to go in the table of contents and find that chapter, okay? But 30% of your written exam is scientific concepts. So what does that include? Well, infection control and safety practices. You want to identify how disease and infection are caused and transmitted. You want to recognize purpose and or effects of infection control principles, which is the levels of infection control, sanitation / cleaning, disinfection, and sterilization. The process of infection control. Recognize when cross-contamination occurs, prevention of cross-contamination, so that means spreading it around. Differentiate between the purpose of single and multi-use tools. So in other words, the implements that you're using, be able to understand which one is a one-time usage thing like files, buffers, the foot files, and multi-use like your cuticle pusher, your cuticle nippers, rollers, clippies that go in the rollers. Those are all multi-use. Your combs, your plastic clips, okay? Apply blood contact procedures. So like your blood spill, which is something you have to demonstrate for your practical exam. Identify requirements of government agencies. So that's like OSHA, EPA. So OSHA standards, you need to know that. You need to know about the EPA, which is Environmental Protection Agency. You also need to know, now this is all under scientific concepts, 30%. What you need to know in human anatomy and physiology, you need to identify the function and structure of the hair and scalp, skin, and nails. You need to identify signs and symptoms of conditions, disorders, and diseases related to hair and scalp, skin, nails. Identify muscles and joints and their functions related to head and face, arms and hands, legs and feet. Identify functions of the nervous system and circulatory system. So this is all under one category, scientific concepts, 30%. You will find this in chapter 5, which is disinfection, sanitation, and all your disorders and your conditions of the hair and scalp, skin and nails, you will find in the chapters 8, 10, and 11. 11 is talking about your scalp diseases and disorders. Human anatomy you will find in chapter 6 if you are coming from the Milady's textbook. So 8 is, I want to say, the skin disorders, and then 10 is the nail disorders, and then 11 is your scalp disorders. Let's see, also, oh, I missed that one. Okay, also under the first category is basic chemistry of products used in cosmetology. You want to recognize the purpose and effects of products and ingredients. Recognize interaction between chemicals, so what happens if you mix them. Recognize physical interactions with chemicals, so if it gets on your skin or nail polish remover, how does it interact with the nail polish? Recognize chemical reactions, that's if you're overexposed, if you mix any chemicals, chemical burns. Recognize the pH scale, and that is it, I'm sorry, for this category. And that is coming from chapter 12. That's chemistry. Now this is what I want to invite you to do. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be on TikTok, or here on Anchor, or if you come across my podcast and it says you can leave comments, or feel free to do that, because I love answering questions and being able to help. If you want to hear more about a topic that I discuss, please just reach out and let me know, and I will be sure to get to it. Okay, I will warn you about myself. Sometimes things come up. My goal for this podcast is to be weekly, and that's because I work full-time and I am in school. So right after work, I log off of work right now because we're working from home, and then I log right on to school and do my homework. And so by that time, it's like 8 o'clock at night, and I'm just zapped out. Same thing with my YouTube videos. Usually I try to do them once a week, but life happens. So if I get sick or anything like that, sometimes I may not upload. But trust me, I'm not going anywhere. This is the beginning, and feel free to reach out to me. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about is hair and hair care and services, and this counts as 40% on your test. So far that's 70%, right, out of 100%. So I'm going to let you know this category here, it's a long one. It fills up this whole page. The chapters, let's just let you know up front. You have to, if you have my lady's textbook, this is still the same chapter 11. Chapters 14, 15, 17. Backtrack to chapter 5, chapter 3, chapter 15. Well, I didn't need to say that twice. Okay, so 14, 15, 17, chapter 3, chapter 11, chapters 17, 18, 19, chapter 14, and chapters 20 and 21. So I'm going to start from the bottom of the page, which is chemical services. You have to apply knowledge of principles, procedures, and safety for hair coloring, including corrective color, hair lightening. So remember my podcast on bleaching, how to do virgin bleach. So listen to those again if you need, and you can watch my videos on it, because I did do a video on how to apply a virgin bleach application. I did that. I also talk about the color wheel. I talk about toners, so just check those out too. Foiling, because at Stateboard for your practical you have foils, so this is also on your written as well. Chemical hair relaxing, restructuring, and curl reduction, so that's including like a soft perm. You have to know hydroxide, which is sodium hydroxide, thio, which is ammonium thioglycolate, keratin, which is the keratin treatments, and then chemical waving and texturizing. You have to know alkaline acid, non-thio, and keratin again. Hair design, so this is in your hairstyling chapters. Apply knowledge of principles, procedures, and safety of hair cutting and shaping. Apply knowledge of principles, procedures, and safety of hair styling, which includes wet hair styling, thermal styling, natural hair styling. Example given is braiding. I think that's kind of new, but I haven't been to Stateboard in over 25 years now. Apply knowledge of principles, procedures, and safety related to hair enhancements, extension, application, and removal, braid and sew attachments, bonding extensions, fusion bonding extensions, tube shrinking, and linking. Apply principles of balance and design, for example, facial shape and physical structure. So that's hair design. Hair care. Apply knowledge of principles and procedures for shampooing and conditioning. Apply knowledge of principles and procedures for scalp treatments and scalp massage. Apply knowledge of draping. So for example, how do you drape for chemicals? How do you drape for shampooing? And how do you drape for just styling the hair or hair cutting? And I also have a video for that. Draping, shampoo draping, shows you all the different ways of draping. Tools used in hair care services. Hold on, let me take a sip of coffee here. Tools used in hair care services. You want to identify function, purpose, and infection control procedures of tools used in hair services. Equipment, example, your chair and your workstation. Your implements, for example, your razors, your shears, your combs and brushes. Supplies and materials, examples, your towels, your drapes, your neck strips, which also is known as sanic strips. Electrical tools, for example, your curling irons, your blow dryers, and your clippers. How to disinfect them properly. Recognize safe practices for the use of tools, your equipment, your implements, your supplies, and ergonomics. And then the last one is client consultation, analysis, and documentation for hair care services. You want to evaluate condition of client's hair and scalp, which is assessment. Recognize conditions that would prohibit service, and they're called contraindications. Determine services or products. Recognize purpose and interpret results of preliminary tests. So for example, PD test and strand test, which I have a video for that. Establishing and maintaining client records. So for example, service history, client card, and medical history. And that is 40%. So far, my beauty people, we have covered what to expect on 70% of your written exam. Okay, and so I'm going to pause it there, and the next time we are going to talk about skincare services, which is 15%, and nail care services, which is also 15%, and that's it for the written exam. So it sounds like a lot. I want to tell you, I also have a video on anxiety for Stateboard, and it's an old video, doesn't have that many views, but I would tell you to just really check that out, because I'm really kind of going over, you know, just the attitude and the mindset you should have when you go to Stateboard, and maybe I'll talk about it again one day. But really, this is what I've told every single person that I've tutored, that I've taught, because at one point I was teaching Stateboard in school, and I will say this, I was blessed to have 100% passing rate. So that is a huge blessing, and I'm not guaranteeing that what I tell you will automatically make you pass because of that, but I have a passion, and I have a fear of telling someone the wrong thing when it comes to Stateboard. So I'm really particular when it comes to that. I would ask you to trust me on this. It sounds like a lot, but if you study little bits at a time, it will get in your mind. And if you're the kind of person, you know, you want to study the night before Stateboard, I used to discourage that. But what I say, because I know myself and I would be the same way, so I can't discourage that completely. But what I would suggest is the night before you go to your testing, don't overstudy, please. Study for about an hour, no more than 2 hours. And at that point, let it go. Because once you enter that facility, it's go for what you know. Go for what you've been taught, And if you attended school every day, or whoever tutored you, you were there and attentive, you really listened to what they say, you know, you have to make sure whoever, because it's an outside business outside of the school. For me, it was. So I charged people. Now, if they were my students in the past, I wouldn't charge them. But people I don't know, I charge for that service. And so you have to make sure that whoever you're deciding to pay to be your tutor for State Board, check out their passing rate. What they say, is it really going to help you pass State Board? Check that out first. So with my record, I will tell you, don't overstudy, because when you go into that test, you panic and you'll blank out. Over time, so scientifically what I learned is when you look at something 3 times, it becomes a long-term memory. Your brain remembers everything, every single thing, whether you are conscious of it or not. So remember that. Meaning, months ago you may have looked over something and then you'll come across it again and it'll strike a memory like, hey, I've seen this word before. I don't remember what it means, but I've seen it before. So just be mindful of that. Some of us have a short attention span. You know yourself. You know if you can sit there for hours or not. But what I'm learning as I'm getting older and as a student myself, you don't have to sit there for hours and study. Limit yourself to 10 minutes. Go watch a show. Come back to it. Do it before bedtime. You know, set a goal for yourself. If it's 20 minutes, that's great. If it's 30 minutes, that's great. If it's an hour, that's great. And then I would say glance over it before you go to bed, and it will get in the brain there. Or wait until that last hour before you go to bed, because it gets in your subconscious mind. So there's so many different ways people know themselves and how they retain information. Sometimes it is by listening to a podcast audibly. Sometimes it's more visual by watching videos. Sometimes it's both. For me, it's both. But I probably would veer more towards visual. I like to see it, but sometimes audibly does help me. So, you know, just take away from that don't be overwhelmed, okay? But I'm doing this to really alert you on what to look for your written exam, and I hope that helped. And I just want to thank you guys for listening. Hopefully you hung in there this whole time, and I will talk to you guys next time, and we will pick up where we left off. And I will say have a good week, you guys. Okay, bye.